Jamey Higham eats potatoes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and probably every snack in between. I'm kidding. At least I think I'm kidding. Jamey grew up in Shelley, a town in eastern Idaho, where potatoes are such a big deal. The high school mascot is a russet potato, and kids still get off school in the fall for potato harvest. Hi, I'm Dave Price. Now, Jamey's challenge is that the industry he loves, potatoes, is trying to find its way as GLP-1 users quite simply just are not eating as much. Those weight loss drugs have users eating less food, but America's potato producers had already been growing more than we could eat in the United States. This week, Jamey, the president and CEO of the Idaho Potato Commission, explains how his industry will work to convince Americans that potatoes still deserve to remain on the plate, what it will do to overcome oversupply issues, and how it can expand so that growers have the markets they need. Jamey, welcome. We appreciate the time. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
Let's talk about Idaho. How's life in Idaho? What's going on?
Life in Idaho is great right now. It's springtime here. Potato plantings are underway across the state, and getting ready to start another crop season.
Hey, talk about your upbringing a little bit. You grew up in a small town in Idaho. What was that like? What'd you learn?
It was great. I grew up in a town called Shelley. It's a small town just south of Idaho Falls in southeast Idaho. Everybody knows everybody. The mascot for the high school that I attended was a russet potato, so they were the Shelley Russets. When we were in high school, my wife was Miss Russet, and it's just a little slice of Americana that doesn't get any better.
So why are you doing what you're doing these days?
I've been in this industry for a long time, probably pushing 30 years, and it's in my blood. I got out of it for a little while and got sucked right back into it, but it's something that's a new challenge every day. And just when you think you've seen everything, something new pops up in our world of potatoes.
You were a poli-sci guy, right? In
Yeah.
undergrad?
Yeah.
I would assume that's got to benefit you now, right?
It does a little bit. I was actually prepared to go to law school when I finished my undergrad.
Okay.
And I wasn't married. I was home for the summer getting ready to do that. And the Shelley Russet football coach left to go somewhere else. And the school district had a hiring freeze on at the time because of some financial issues. And the AD asked me for 1 year if I would coach the varsity football team. And I ended up loving it. And I did it for, I think, 6 years, but it required me to get a job that started really early in the morning and could be done in time for football practice in the fall. And so that's how I got into potato business. A company called Walker Produce, hired me. I started out doing quality control for them, kind of worked my way into logistic and sales, and then got rolling after that. So that's kind of how I got into the business.
All right. So for those of us who grew up in a household where it was for dinner, meat, potatoes, veggie, I am curious what your life is like when we can get on social media and see these influencers pushing protein, and potatoes, starches. Those are the bad guys, right?
We're the good guys actually. But we've had this battle before, and it was earlier in my career when the Atkins diet became so popular. And potatoes it seemed like overnight were just such a negative. And so the Idaho potato industry and the potato industry in general fought back. And we're trying to, we were emphasizing all the positive characteristics of potatoes, the potassium, all of the all the different uses for potatoes, and that's pretty well behind us. But the new one, as you know, is the GLP-1 inhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been battling that for a little while. And it's not just potatoes. I think it's all food, because it's just not that they've stopped eating, they're just eating less of everything. And we've been trying to figure out ways to deal and live with that, because we want people to be healthy. First and foremost, we don't want people to be unhealthy, but we feel like potatoes are a key part of a healthy diet.
So what does that mean for producers? We are already seeing how in America we grow more than we can personally eat, right? So we are dependent on exports. So now you're dealing with this GLP challenge. So what does that mean for growers?
It means that we need to grow the amount of potatoes that fits what the demand is. And that's tough in a commodity, because right now there are not a lot of options. And so in Idaho, in certain parts of Idaho, your options are, potatoes, grain, or a grain of some sort, maybe alfalfa and corn. But there just aren't a lot of options, and there's not very many commodities that are good right now. Beef seems to have done well lately, but there just aren't any good options to grow anything else. So I feel like we just need to figure out how to get that, the supply to meet up with the demand, and then we can get some better returns for our growers here in Idaho. But it's a challenge.
And of course, Idaho's king. We're also talking about largely Washington and Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So
Colorado.
Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
How are you then convincing people that potatoes still have to be part of the overall American diet?
We're doing a couple of things, and those are very astute questions. So we have at the commission, what we do mainly is we promote Idaho potatoes, and that is in all forms, whether it's fresh, frozen, dehydrated. If they're from Idaho, we're kind of in that world, and we promote it through some consumer promotions, advertisings, where we go out and we try to talk about how important that potatoes are in Idaho, and that they're part of a healthy diet. We have found, our experience has been that it's easier to get somebody that's already a light potato user to eat more potatoes than to get somebody to change their mind. I always compare it to voting. It's easier to get somebody out to vote that already is going to vote for you than try to get somebody to change their mind.
Sure.
And so
that's the poli-sci guy coming through there.
That's right. And so, from our TV commercials that we do and a lot of our promotions, it's directed toward a segment that's maybe 25 to 45 that are light potato users. The generation that's a little bit older than that are pretty well potato eaters. And so we don't want to not pay attention to them, but our focus is on those light to medium potato users in that age gap there. That's one thing we're doing. And also, several years ago, before this really took off, the GLP-1s, we formed an alliance with the American Diabetes Association. And because it's just, people just assume that if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, if you're living with diabetes in your life, that potatoes are off limits. And we worked with the American Diabetes Association for quite a while, and we got to the point where we can say that Idaho potatoes are a healthy source of carbs for those people that are living with diabetes and pre-diabetes. And the American Diabetes Association, the way they look at it is they use what's called the plate method. And you almost described it perfectly earlier when we were talking. You're going to have a chicken breast or a steak or a protein on this side of the plate, and you're going to have a broccoli or a salad on the other side of the plate, and then you're going to have the potato there. and you eat them as one meal. And I think that the thinking is that you don't just eat a potato in a vacuum, or you don't just eat a steak in a vacuum, or whatever it might be, that you eat them together. And that way, as you eat them together, you don't see the blood sugar increases because you've got the protein. And the best way I would compare it is regular M&Ms and peanut M&Ms. So when you eat peanut M&Ms, it's better for your blood sugar than if you're eating regular M&Ms, because you've got the protein and the chocolate at the same time, if that makes sense to you. And so that's kind of that's the road we've been going down lately, is telling people potatoes can be part of a healthy diet, but it's just like everything else. You just got to be smart about how you eat them.
So as you look for that message to punch through, I'm reading some headlines about growers in the UK that now have this like glut, this
Saw that.
oversupply of potatoes right now
Yeah.
because there's been this ginormous, if you're talking, I think I saw 1 out of every 8 American adults is trying this GLP-1 thing. So initially it's, oh, can't have potatoes or anything. I've realized that my muscles are wasting away and I'm going to go heavy protein as they try to figure out what their balance is. But so like in the UK, they're trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do with all these potatoes? Are you seeing that build up in our country already?
A little bit. It's hard to say for sure, because this year we just had perfect growing conditions around the United States. And you would think that if you had great growing conditions and you grew a bumper crop and the quality is excellent, that it would mean better returns for the farmers.
Yeah.
But it's actually the opposite, because it means there's too many potatoes. And when you have that, and it's not just Idaho, it was a great potato season around the globe for potato growing. And so there were too many to begin with, I feel comfortable saying. But this chunk that's coming out of it for that is hurting. That's why everybody's going to have to do a little bit of a paradigm shift. I don't know how long term this is, but they're going to have to do a little bit of a shift on production, and try to make those decisions on acreage that meet up with the demand that's out there. Potato consumption, I think it's increasing, but it's as our population increases and different things, but it's trying to find that right sweet spot that you're giving the consumers what they want to eat, stuff that tastes good, comfort food, healthy food, but also that you produce it in a way so that it makes it so that the growers can stay in business and make some money and keep farming from year to year, and basically feed the world.
So you're dealing with that GLP-1 dynamic. I'm curious though about this emerging MAHA conversation that we have right now, where part of that push, for example, at least the way I understand it, might be, hey, potatoes would be better than something super processed, right? And I found some old stats, and I don't know if these are still true, but less than 50% of what we grow would be on the fresh side, as opposed with the
Probably.
rest of it going maybe toward processed side. So do you see that flipping for growers as people are looking maybe a little harder at what they're consuming? Will there be more demand on the fresh side?
I that's hard to say, because we're so early in that process right
Yeah.
now. But if you look at the new food pyramid that came out, right in the smack dab center of it is a potato, and
Hmm.
we're thrilled about that. And I think they're still working on the definition of what is processed and what isn't for that
Hmm.
stuff. But when you
Yeah,
look
that
at
seems to be
things,
subjective, doesn't it?
it
About
does.
how
A
that's
potato
defined.
chip, you've got
Yeah.
potato, oil, salt, and French
Hmm.
fries are basically the same thing. Is that the same as something that's been, basically concocted in a lab? I think it's different. I think that it's a different thing. But the people in Washington D.C. on the East Coast are going to have to figure out those definitions. But we think that potatoes can be a good part of someone's diet. But that's, we're home teamers on that stuff.
Yeah, probably so. All right, poli sci guy, uh, and I just transitioned to policy. But so
Yeah,
trade. Let's talk trade.
yeah,
Mexico, Canada, two
yeah,
vital trade partners historically for your industry. What's going
yeah.
on right now with them?
Uh, well, I'm not going to say all these names wrong, but the the trade agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada that followed NAFTA, you probably know what it's called. It's on the tip of my tongue here.
Yeah.
We still have what's that?
USMCA. USMCA,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
We still have we can trade back and forth pretty easily,
Yeah.
and so Mexico and Canada are both very good trading partners for us. We do export some potatoes. We export a lot of processed potatoes, frozen, different things, French fries, tater tots, stuff like that, and flakes as well, the dehydrated part of it. But we're also seeing some the processing industries in India and China are ramping up right now. So we're seeing some competition overseas, and we'll have to keep doing the things we need to do, adjust, move the cups around to figure it out. There will always be a healthy potato industry in Idaho. It's just like everything else, we're having to figure out where we're going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now.
What about the particular varieties? And the reason I ask you this, very biased, but my mom's going to be 82, and sweet potatoes are her staple, man. She will. My dad passed years ago, so mom's cooking dinners for herself. She fills the oven with a bunch of sweet potatoes, bakes them all at once, throws them all in the freezer, and like every day she pulls one of those suckers out, drops it in the microwave, and then she has her protein and her vegetables, which is why she's going to live to be 130 probably the way she lives her life. Walks the dog for an hour a day. But are you seeing, in terms of the individual varieties we are growing and consumption, what's that all looking like?
So you're trying to trigger me with the sweet potato talk there. No,
Exactly.
I think the sweet potato versus the the russets and the reds and the yellows, the traditional potatoes, it's kind of found a happy place. It's not, for a while there. There was some cannibalism going both ways, but I think it's reached a happy place. I think that our industry, I know, and we fund a lot of research on it. Everybody's always looking for that new, better variety of potato, and we're certainly doing that. You want one that maybe uses less water, as the West is experiencing
For
some
sure.
drought right now. Or you want one that stores better and longer, or bruises less easily, or is resistant to certain diseases. Everybody's always looking for that perfect potato, and there are new ones coming out all the time, and but it's still, it's hard to get one that sticks. There's a lot of new ones that come out, but getting one that sticks long term is tough to do. But always looking for a better one, and things have evolved in my lifetime. The russet Burbank was the dominant potato in all of the United States, and now it's less so. And now varieties like a Norcota and other ones are being grown more because they have different characteristics that work better for the growers and are acceptable for the consumers and the processors as well.
You mentioned water, which, of course, we're talking to you in Idaho, and as we look at some other states out west in particular, how vital could that be to the industry moving forward, and where are you seeing some progress there?
It's very vital to us. It's the lifeblood of Idaho, agriculture. We had a light winter this year. It didn't get as cold as it normally does. We didn't get quite as much snow in the mountains as we normally do. And we've got an aquifer that is underground in Idaho that's huge. And we've got to take care of that while we're still trying to grow our crops, and we've got I wouldn't say it. We've got two sides of that issue. We've got surface water and we've got groundwater, and then the water rights that go with each of those. And that's an issue everywhere, not just in Idaho. And so we've got our legislature is trying to figure out long-term solutions for that. And I think, one of them is they want to keep more of our water here in Idaho and have less of it go through the river out into the ocean. But we've got a legislature that is working on that. Senator Kevin Cook from Idaho is one of the tips of the spear on that, trying to make sure that we protect our water in Idaho and that we have long-term solutions.
That's a tough balance, right?
It is because you want to stay in business today, but you also want to plan for the future. And this year, we'll have a crop, but we just didn't get the snowpack in the mountains that we normally get. We've got decent snowpack, but here in Boise, it just rained steadily for the last 3 days. And like I said, there's snow in the mountains where there wasn't. So we're happy for anything we can get when it comes to moisture right now. But there are states that are much worse off than us right now.
You mentioned how you all have to adjust to this kind of oversupply and things kind of settling down. Are you seeing growers pulling back a little bit this year with what they plan to plant to try to lessen that supply? Because that's hard, right? Because it's
I gotta be honest.
Ideally, you want the other guy to pull back and not you, right?
So I'll tell you my philosophy on that conversation.
Yeah.
If I say that I feel like people are pulling back and not going to plant as many, sometimes that's a green light for others to plant more.
Good point.
And it's not just potatoes that they do that. So I just kind of stay out of that conversation because I want growers to do what they think is best for them first and for our industry. And then we'll see. We do the acre count each year. And so somewhere between June 20th and June 25th, we'll know how many acres we have in Idaho, which we're the elephant in the room when it comes to the national supply. And so we'll know where we're at. I suspect it'll be down some. I just don't know how much.
What's the trend been the last couple of years?
Last year was a medium, was kind of an average year. The challenge was we had such good yields and such good quality that, a 5% reduction in acres sounds like a lot until your packouts go up 6% or something, or your yields, And so there's a lot of moving parts on that, but we're hopeful that we'll get that supply side of the equation down this year.
We've seen some other industries where some people just decide, hey, I can't do this anymore. You look at like the grape industry in California, for example, where you're having people just selling, getting out, whatever. Maybe some of the tree fruits have settled a bit there as some have moved on and moved out. How are you, as you look at the growers across your region, is the industry strong enough where you see people staying in, or has it reached a constricted point where the economic pressures are making people second guess?
I think the second option. There's people that are questioning that. There's also some that are hurting but healthy. It depends, I think, on the individual growing family entities, personal situation. If you're leasing your ground, you're probably in a different spot than somebody that owns a lot of ground. And people we're struggling here. There's no doubt about it. We've had 2 or 3 years in a row of poor prices that are below the cost of production. And it depends. People, it's all different. If you have contracts for, certain parts of the industry, you're doing better. If you're on the open market only, you're really struggling right now. Go back 4 or 5 years and it was reverse. People that were on the open market were doing well, and the people that were under contracts were doing okay. And so it's this balance that's always back and forth, this ebb and flow. But we are struggling right now, and we need a good year this year.
I'd like to close out with a version of this question I've asked a handful of people since we've started doing this podcast. And as some background, as I say frequently on here, I didn't grow up in ag, grew up in Southern Illinois in the St. Louis area where we had farms near us, but no direct family members who were farming. The one thing that I'm trying to process as I learn more about this industry is that let's use potatoes. If on the simplest level, when we look at the American consumer, a potato could be healthier for our consumption. That's something that is concocted, that doesn't grow naturally out of the ground, right? What would it take to redesign the American system? Let's put tariffs and trade and all that on the side for a moment, and I appreciate that they're super important. But let's just talk about American consumption here. Our growers are incredibly good at this, right? That's why we can grow more than we can eat. What would it take to better construct a supply chain system where your fresh products are going to my kids' schools, my aunt's nursing home, daycare center, whatever, restaurants, everything, like to better push out fresh, healthy foods in our system? And I know that's kind of a deep one to end on, but like what could make that system work better where maybe we're not freaking out so much about trade deals and can't eat, whatever. If we're talking about stuff that grows in the ground that our ancestors ate for generations, that in theory should be pretty healthy. I think we all understand maybe you can't eat French fries 3 times a day or something, right? Like maybe that's not the right balance. But a potato can be a very healthy product. So if it's a healthy product and we want our kids and our families eating healthy stuff, what makes the system work better?
That is a deep question. I think that it is, part of it would be education. I think we've gotten away from, and it's nothing that I think that you and I can change, but I think that families having dinner together around a dinner table, it's probably more rare than it is common anymore. And I think that that's one part of it. But I'm going to skip over your question just a little bit. But whatever we do, the thing that's made the Idaho potato industry great, in my opinion, is the independent entrepreneurial mindset of not just potato farmers, but farmers in general or growers in general, and the people that start the companies that make, French fries or tater tots or whatever. And whatever we do, I don't want to take that away. I think that is so important in our economy, is that that drive for our stakeholders in this industry to want to strive to do better and be independent. Because I think do we need to work together on some level? Yes, we do. But it's that independent drive of the American farmer that's made us so good at what we do that we're overproducing a little bit right now. I just want to say, first of all, I don't ever want to take that away, because I think that's what makes the engine click for our ag industry. But I think it is one of the things. I like convenience for me, and a lot of our products are very convenient. But as far as being healthy and convenient, I think is the key to making some of that stuff click. And some of the stuff that might be considered, and by the way, I wouldn't have any problem eating French fries 3 times a day. I just want to be clear about that. And but I think healthy and convenient is where you have to go to move that needle. Something that's doesn't take an hour and a half to prepare.
For sure. And for the record, I'm not dogging French fries. We're a big French fry family.
I understand.
Maybe mashed is sometimes okay,
Yeah, my guilty pleasure is a burger and fries. So
amen to that. Jamey, really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for walking us through this.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
Did you know that most of Idaho's 13 billion pounds of potatoes grow in the eastern part of Idaho? For more fun facts like that, you can check out our profile piece about Jamey and the potato industry, and you can find that in the American Farmland Owner Weekly Newsletter. It's free, and it's the place where landowners get their news. Check it out now to find out what this is all about. You can do that at AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.